Good morning, everybody. Welcome to OSA's podcast, Making It Real. I'm Tim Squire.
And I'm Corey Bowie.
Good to be back with you here. Beginning of another week. Corey, how's it going for you?
Better than last week. Yeah.
Yes, you were a little bit under the weather last week.
A little sick. I'm sorry I missed the conversation with Liz.
Yes, it was a good one. Had some nice conversation about music and especially music at Old St. Andrews. So thank you, Liz, if you're out there listening. It was good to have you here as one of our conversation partners. And so today, I promised you all last week that I would do a conversation with somebody from Food Share and talk about food insecurity. We couldn't get anybody to respond to us from Food Share to even call in as a call-in guest. So we're going to keep trying to pursue that and see what we can come up with. We'll
keep
Corey?
Working on that. And I think we'll try to also have our new director of the backpack program join that conversation. So hopefully in the next coming weeks, we'll plan that.
Would be excellent. Yes, Corey and I met with our new person who leading the backpack program at the First Congregational Church in Bloomfield. Excellent volunteer. It's going to be great to work with her. So we do promise that we will get back to dealing with food insecurity and trying to help feed people. So with that, we had to shift gears quickly on the fly. And I got to say, a big shout out to the ECCT clergy page on Facebook. Most of the clergy colleagues that I have here in Connecticut were all a part of that Facebook page. And they come up with some great articles and topics to discuss. And so I found one that kind of fits, or maybe I should say it's part two or a follow-up to what we talked about with consumerism a couple weeks ago. It's not about consumerism, but it's about how to move into the future. And so with that, I'm going to share with you the title of that particular article. 2018 is dead. Why every leader should stop trying to go back to the way it was. This article was written by Carrie Nywolf. Carrie, I apologize if somehow the algorithms show you that we did a podcast about your article. I apologize if I mispronounced your name. I apologize. But Carrie, we want to say thank you for a very enlightening article. So basically what Carrie is trying to bring to the attention, especially to the life of the church, is for us to recognize that the going back to normal that we all have been longing for is not going to happen. The way life was in 2019, right, and moving into the early part of 2020, when all of a sudden the pandemic hit us hard and everything shut down, he's basically saying that in all aspects of the world, we are not going to return to the nirvana that was 2019. Is that right, Corey?
Yeah, it's a hard reality to swallow, but and I think we've all said it. Oh, when things go back to normal, or when we're done with the pandemic. Well, I think we've realized that isn't happening anytime soon.
No, it's not. And I just
the white screen is not going away.
Oh, it's off. We turned it off. You're just a little bit delayed. That's okay. That was Karen checking in with us, basically reminding us that the white banner we had up that said Old St. Andrews didn't go away, but just to make sure, I'll go in and check. Yep, it looks like it's been removed. So hopefully you all are seeing our beautiful faces this morning. So getting back to the article here, the interesting bit here is I came across an article just the other day. Actually, I think it was on CNN about how they're actually looking to make a pill now that'll be a COVID pill that will help continue to boost the immune system of the body to fight COVID. That may be how we deal with COVID.
Rather than shots and vaccines. And
that, a COVID pill, when you get sick, like you take antibiotic pills when you have to, fight off some bacterial infection, well, there may be a COVID pill. So sounds like we might be not going back to normal ever. So, but I want to start off this. So I got a copy of this article right here. Again, 2019 is dead. And it starts off this way. I'm going to share a couple quotes here. You hear it every day, and maybe you think it or say it. We're at 50% of where we were in 2019. We haven't seen the same level of blank as we did before the pandemic. Or, most depressingly, if we could only get back to where we were in 2019. No judgment here. I think those thoughts every day too. The leadership question, though, is whether that line of thinking is helpful. Increasingly, it's not. Here's why. Leaders who always want to go back will never move their organizations forward. First, let's look at why that's no longer a helpful way to frame your leadership challenge. And then second, he shares with us, and this is what we're going to focus on this morning, 5 things to focus on as you move forward that he hopes will help us make progress in whatever we're leading. The future may be brighter than you think, he says. Thank God for that. Crisis is an accelerator. It can accelerate your decline, but it can also accelerate your progress. To do that, though, you have to stop obsessing over the past. What do you think, Corey? What do you think about that initial introduction he gives us?
Yeah, well, I think change is always happening, right? But I think, in a pandemic, in a crisis, things happen to change quicker. You may not notice it in normal course of our lives, how things change. But yeah, I think this past year and a half has really accelerated the changes, and
Yep.
and it's made it harder to keep up.
I agree. And probably the biggest place that we see that as church people, and he addresses this right away. He talks about when churches had to literally in a week's time go online with their services.
I remember that.
Yes.
And it was challenging. And I have to say, you made us move very quickly. And I think some of the staff maybe was resisting some of the change initially.
Could be. Yeah. I mean, not as much as I think other people I know had felt resistance from their staff or their congregation.
Right. Because I think a lot of people didn't even go online for months or
yes,
or time. And I don't think we missed a Sunday. We started off with just a phone and Facebook Live, I think, is our first trial at it
was a phone.
Yeah.
And then we were concerned about the phone like running out of battery.
And the Wi-Fi
was on and off. Oh yeah.
So
feels like it was decades ago, but it was just a year and a half ago.
It does. And it felt like every week we were actually changing. How do we make it better?
Yes.
And we were moving forward. So looking back at it, I think we definitely tried to keep the momentum.
And I think we did a good job.
I do too.
I think as the people of OSA, we stepped up to it. Now, I do remember, and he says this in the article too, and I'll share a little bit of what he says there. I think a lot of us thought when everything shut down, I think the general consensus, at least in this country, was, oh, well, maybe we'll shut down for 2 weeks. We need 10 days, 14 days to get past this COVID thing. And obviously that didn't happen. In fact, he says here, had the pandemic that disrupted everything in 2020 been short-lived, it would have made sense to assume you could quickly snap back to where you were in late 2019 or early 2020. Obviously, that didn't happen. While there may be a debate, and I think there is still a debate raging of whether or not we're still in a pandemic, he says we're not only still in a pandemic, but the disruption it caused will be around for a while longer. And this is key. Wishing the pandemic was over or believing it over doesn't make it over. And so then he goes here, and this is the part that I can relate to. Church online went from novelty to universal. Not only church, but everybody had to become Zoom expert. I didn't even know about Zoom.
I had no idea either.
Did not even know about Zoom until all of a sudden it was like, okay, everybody go on Zoom. So I went and got my account, and we got a church account for it. But he talks about online shopping permanently changed our buying habits. Things shifted at home, work, school, shopping, church, fitness, entertainment. And that even as those things open up, nothing is going to go back to exactly as it was before. And I find this shopping. I go to stores a lot because I want to support, the brick and mortar stores. And there's not a product in there that I'm looking for, and a lot of that's because the pandemic disrupted shipping, it disrupted trucking, it disrupted the making of products. And so there's a lot of times I'm like, oh, it's easier to order it online.
Right. We're actually being almost forced to make changes.
Yeah,
You
I
can
agree.
still try to do the same things, but it's harder to do your normal course because you have to take detours around all these things that have changed.
Exactly. And I like that phrase. You have to take detours. It feels like everything's a detour now.
Right.
That going back to the old road that I always traveled down, that it's being remade, and they're not quite done with construction. The last comment he says, and kind of introducing everything, is I want to share: the world has changed, and leaders who try to go back to the way it was will increasingly find themselves trying to reach a world that no longer exists. Now, what I like about this article is in that negative realm of things where he's saying the world that you once had is no more. He doesn't stop there. He says, so let's figure out what we can do.
Right.
And so I'm going to bring up here on the screen for us. He gives us 5, in a sense, bullet points to look at. And the first one is titled, Find a New Sustainable Pace. I can relate to number 1. One of the things that happened with the pandemic, and I was so shocked by this, this was probably one of the changes that really threw me, was that my work level increased, even though I was around less people. And one of the reasons for that was all of this technology gear here. Not only did we end up, and thank God for a vestry and leadership at OSA that said, let's get the online equipment we need. Not only did I have to learn and get this equipment, then we had to learn how to use it.
Right.
Any thoughts on that, Corey?
Yeah, no, like I said, it was, I feel week to week, there was new things to do and new things to learn. Part of it was exciting and part of it's scary, because new things can be scary.
Yes.
And, you were afraid to make mistakes or, and a lot of the times we were only online. So there wasn't an option for, oh, I'm sorry, it's the equipment's not working, because we wouldn't be able to connect to people.
Yeah, exactly.
So there was some stress involved in having things go the right way.
Yeah. And not only did I have all of this, oh, wow, we've had this slam on the brakes and go the other way. I also literally took some online courses to learn how to use some of this stuff, how sound works, how video works, things that were a little bit more advanced than me just running a camcorder. And I'm grateful for that knowledge now, because, part of it, some of it's fun. I mean, it's fun to be able to do a podcast like this, but there's always setting up and tearing down. And one of the things about OSA is, we can't just leave the equipment out because our building's open.
Right.
So we have to literally, take it down, lock it up, put it back up. And so, that's a challenge. And so in the midst of that, I think exhaustion has prevailed for most of us.
Yeah, it does set in, and your body definitely tells you, that you can't maintain a pace that is constant all the time.
Exactly. In fact, he says in the article, over time, and I just put this up on the screen for everybody, over time, there's an inverse relationship between overworking and performance. The more hours you work, the less effective you become.
Right. You have to work more efficiently, but working longer doesn't always mean that you're working better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, I think that was true before the pandemic.
Right.
I think one of the realities about an American lifestyle is we praise those who overwork. And we have a tendency to think if somebody's not overworking, are they really giving it their all?
Right. There is a lot of pressure to feel like I'm working 60 hours a week, or doing more than the typical, that's supposed to be better.
Yeah. And he asked this question in the article: ask yourself and the people who love you, can I run at this pace for another year? No. And I will say that I think one of the things that Old St. Andrews is good about is making sure that our paid staff is diligent about not killing themselves by overworking, like pushing themselves to the edge where they're completely exhausted or they end up physically ill. Because, stress can elevate blood pressure, can elevate the risks of certain diseases becoming prevalent. So I think he's right on with that, and I think we have to, as he says right here in the article, and I put this up here on the screen too. Ultimately, if you don't declare a finish line, your body will. It's called burnout.
I hear that. Yeah,
and it's true. I don't know about some of you all, but one of the things that the COVID stress did for me was and I actually found an article on this early in the pandemic about COVID dreams, about people just having outlandishly strange dreams, not necessarily scary or frightening dreams, but like I've had several dreams where people that I grew up with in high school are hanging out at a party at a house somewhere with people who are in my life right now, like people from OSA. And I'd be in this dream going, how do these people know each other? And I'd wake up and be like, that's got to be part of this COVID thing. Just strange dreams.
But the world just seems upside down. So even your dreams are.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So he's right. The first thing is definitely finding a new sustainable pace. And you know what, folks? That's true for everybody. That's not just the church. If somebody's out there working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, that's not good. That is not good for your soul. It's not good for your body. It's not good for your mental health. And, I know at least in America, we, make more money. What's the bottom line? We got to make sure the shareholders are satisfied. The classic thing is, and I love this, and I think it's Karen who reminded me most recently of it. I don't think anybody on their deathbed lays there and says, I wish I would have worked more. So. All right. Well, his point number 2 says this: focus on people you've reached, not the people you lost. Leadership in churches need to hear this loud and clear, because we have a tendency, and I am, this is a bad habit I have, is we get more entrenched or entranced by, oh my gosh, why did somebody leave? To the neglect of the people who are still there. And that's not a good way to go. I spend a lot of time in old church world, he says, but the same is true in many industries and businesses. Some of the people you lost aren't coming back ever. And that's true.
Usually, if people have left, they're not going to turn around and come back. So yeah, it's the people that are still here, and the people that are here have actually made a difference.
Oh, exactly. And the people that not only knew, but the people who have maybe the people that have stayed around and have been here for years, decades, they all still want to do ministry.
Right.
And so, and it happens. It's kind of like when you preach a sermon and 20 people come through a receiving line at the end of the worship service because, people want to, say hello to the rector or, shake hands with those who led the worship. And 20 people come through and say, oh, that was an amazing sermon. Oh, I loved it. Thank you. It really gave me something to reflect on. And one person will say, I didn't like it. And you spend the whole rest of your Sunday going, why didn't that person like my sermon? But 20 other people said they loved it. We have this tendency to focus on the negative or the downside of something. And the reality is that we have to, as he says here, getting angry at people who changed is one of the best ways to ensure you never change. You'll stay angry at the past while everyone else walks into the future. Right on. Can't say it much better than that. And then, of course, this last line he says in this section, which I love, I'll share this also. The new people don't know who left. They don't know what used to be. They like what is. Any comments on that, Corey?
Yeah, it's the changes are here to stay, and more changes are here to come. So I think getting angry or upset that things aren't done the way they used to be, or even by the old staff, you just have to think about moving forward and working with the people that are here.
Yep.
So
yeah, and as one of these cliche phrases that has so much truth to it, the only constant in life is change, and yet we try to resist it. I just don't get that. We try to resist it, and yet it is the one constant. He kind of ends this bullet point of, focus on those who are there and not those who left by saying this last quote, and I'll share it with everybody. It's up on the screen. If in your sadness you continue to show disappointment at who's not in the room, you'll miss the people who are in the room, not to mention the fine people who stayed with you through the entire crisis. And that is very true. I think about that when I come to a worship service and I'm like, oh, wow, we only have 10 people at worship today. What's going on? Where are the other 20 or 30? And there are times I just have to say, Tim, what's your problem here? There's 10 people that came to church today. They want to worship.
And probably have been coming or have been participating in some of the ministries that we've continued to do, even in the pandemic. So, we're blessed with the people that are committed and seeing some new faces.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have to say that out loud. And I hope that all the OSAers who are listening to this morning's podcast or will listen to the recording of it later, I can say as the rector, and I believe I can speak on behalf of the staff, we are thankful for the ministries you do.
And the support that they've given to us as a staff.
Absolutely.
Reaching out to help for various technical things, or, reaching out to say, oh, you guys are doing a good job. That it really means a lot, you know?
Yeah. And so, thank you for that, because, a church isn't just about a priest. A church isn't just about a staff. A church is about the people that make it up and are willing to sacrifice and do the love of God's work in the world. And so we are blessed. And that's a beautiful thing. Moving on into bullet point number 3. And I like this one because I have never liked the metrics that churches have had to follow. Choose new metrics, he says. And what do we mean by metrics? Well, one of the things that Episcopalians love to do is we love to keep attendance and then fill out parochial reports that say how much money has come in a year and how much People were at worship. Who was there on Easter and who was there at Christmas time and all these kind of things. Metrics that I think kind of fit that consumerist culture that we were talking about
For
a couple of weeks ago, like who's got the best attendance record. And while the powers that be will say, no, that's not what it's really for, I think we need to prayerfully think about that. So he invites us to look at some new metrics. And here's some that he says, some possible metrics to focus on: number of first-time guests or people that have come together. He uses the word customers. He means by some businesses, because this article is for more than just churches. For church leaders, number of new volunteers. Love that. Number of first-time donors for church leaders. Number of people who take a step, enroll in a program, etc. Month-over-month growth, and soon year-over-year growth. So it's not so much what's the attendance, but how many new people have you reached?
Right. And what are you doing? What are there ministries that are actually, getting involved and making a difference?
Yeah, exactly. And it makes me think of that biblical story where, Jesus goes after the one lost sheep, and, the 99 are kind of left there, like, well, and he's like, well, I got to go find the lost one. And I'm not saying that new people at church are lost, but what I'm saying is that if a new person comes here and says, I want to do a ministry, we got to, yay, Jesus, like that's amazing. And I feel that way with a new person leading the backpack program.
Right.
Seems excited, energized, ready to feed people.
Yes.
And we definitely have some people here that very much are like, a positive, powerful spirit of we need to feed people,
dedicated
yes.
and willing to step up and push for change.
Yeah, exactly. He says focusing on new metrics for a new season will help you spot new momentum when it happens. And I think that's true. Again, and this is where the institutional church, especially as Episcopalians, gets stuck. We get stuck in our old way of reading metrics. So we need to, I think, listen to what he has to say. Number four bullet point: focus on what you can control, not on what you can't. I tell this to my kids all the time.
I thought the same thing.
And then I don't necessarily follow it myself. Yeah, go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, as I say, it sounds reasonable, as a thought, but it is. It's hard not to think about, like you referred to, with that one person that didn't like your sermon, and those are things outside of your control. So you need to focus on you and how you can make positive change.
Yes, exactly. And that is especially true in communal or team realities in life. My daughter plays volleyball, and, when you're in a team environment, you have to do your part, and then you have to rely on people to do their part. And if they don't do their part, screaming and yelling at them is probably not going to get them to do it. Because you don't have control over that. You can't, wave a magic wand and say, do your part this way. You just have to be encouraging, keep being uplifting, keep offering them a positive challenge.
Right. Supportive.
Yeah. I mean, I know there are extreme situations where somebody wants to sabotage what the group is doing. And then you have to figure out a way to deal with that. Sabotage, especially in group dynamics, is a very real thing. But again, you got to control how you respond to that.
Right. You have a reaction.
Yeah, exactly.
And only you control that.
I like this line here in bullet point 4. He says, you can't control a virus, government, regulations, or human behavior and habits. Rather than railing against them constantly on social media, Please stop, leaders. Please stop. Just focus on serving and helping people. Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many things within the life of the church that we can't control, that we just have to, focus on helping people. And he makes this quote: when you start focusing on what you can control, not on what you can't, you make progress. And I think that's true.
Right.
In a lot of counseling situations, therapy situations, you'll hear a counselor say, but you can't control the person you're angry at. You can't manipulate them to do things the way you want. You can only focus on your own behavior, your own actions, and how you will respond. And what I hear him saying here is when you start focusing on what you can control, not on what you can't, you make progress. That is so true. And the last bullet point, staff to a new skill set. This one's tough.
Mm.
And again, the institutional church has, created ways to have staff. We have a director of this, we have a director of that. The ministries we have, we want somebody to do ministry to families and young children and Sunday school, and we want it done this way because this is how we did it in 1950. And the reality is that constant change is there. And so he says, he continues here with that, reimagine how you're going to carry out skill sets to do the ministry.
Yeah, that stood out to me too. And they said that, think about not how you're doing it now, but how you want to do it in the future.
Mhm.
What are you working towards? And
Exactly.
there's certainly so many different skill sets out there that can be learned, or that you can try to look for to bring you to the where it is you want to go.
And he asks this question in there. A great way to ask the question is this: when you're thinking about, new skill sets, if we were starting over again today, what skill set would we be hiring? As you reimagine your future, you can imagine a team. And by that, I don't really think that he means that we necessarily have to. I really don't think he's saying clear the house and start over.
Right. Replace everyone with new. It's kind of like what we did here.
Yeah.
Is learned what we needed to do what
Exactly.
what we saw was the future of streaming, and now podcasting, and all sorts of things that we didn't do just a year and a half ago.
And I do think, and he doesn't necessarily say this in here, but that doesn't mean I think he's ignoring it or saying it doesn't work, but he does. I think it's possible to even have people that are a current staff, like we did here, learn a new skill set.
Right.
Like moving to, a simple example of that is in the office. Karen is one who, before COVID, was constantly doing bulletins that would then get printed, or bulletins were always different designs of bulletins, this style of bulletin, this, include this, don't include this. Well, then we had to shift to online and providing a bulletin online. So she gets that bulletin ready. She sends that to you. You put it on the online, and the team had to adjust to that.
Right.
And he does say this in this area of it, but doesn't seem to expand on it as much as might be kind of fun. But I think he also wants you to read his book, which I'm going to tell you what his book is. It says, if online remains an afterthought in your future, you won't have much of a future. And as much as that may be off-putting to some of us or all of us, online reality is part of our reality now.
For sure. And it's almost most of the communication we do is almost all digital and online.
Yeah.
We've pretty much gone to that. And, you know, week after week, we get people watching our online
Mm-hmm.
streaming
Yep.
service.
And even if that's only 10 people, the
It's-
reality, that's 10 people that you wouldn't have reached if you didn't have the online.
Right. That weren't here in the room. And we've got people actually from different states watching us.
Absolutely. We do. And, you know, and where this becomes challenging is, you know, so much is moving away for good reason from like paper. And that's even a kind of take care of creation kind of thing. So we have the ability to give online. We have the ability to receive donations, people's pledges online. We send most of our communications online. And then every once in a while, somebody say, well, I think in this communication, we need to send it out with an envelope and a stamp. And I stop and say to myself, is that the best use of our resources? I don't think so, but I also recognize that there is a segment of our population that doesn't want to let go of that.
Right. That again, and that's the change part.
It is,
you know,
yes.
that and it is technology, and technology can be challenging to
Mhm.
people that, you know, haven't had that in their life for most of their life.
Yes.
And digital too. We've worked a lot in our website, and I think
Mhm.
you know,
Yep.
a lot of what we do is on our website. You can see recordings of last week's sermon and last week's worship.
Yep.
You can click on that and see the recording of that. You can, you know, hear podcasts, and you can hear music that the choirs recorded. I mean, there's, you know, a great deal of information that we've, you know, put on there because we know people are on their computers and on
Absolutely.
their
phones and-
right, digital, their devices, and that's where they're getting most of their information.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that we did this like the first year I was here. So maybe about 3.5 years ago, we had a time where younger members of the parish who have been born into a world of technology were assisting people who were of an older generation in the parish,
Right.
how to do technology stuff.
Yeah.
And it was great. Part of our skill set change probably should be continuing to provide opportunities for people to learn, how do you set up a YouTube account, a free account? How do you subscribe so that every time that a church event comes on, it pops up on their phone and says, hey, OSA is going live.
Or attend a Zoom meeting, you know.
Yes, exactly.
We did, you know, a lot of, when we were having our book clubs, we were doing them via Zoom because
Yep.
we weren't meeting in person.
Exactly.
So yeah, no, that's a great thought to continue that.
So lots to think about here. And to invite you even further into that conversation, I have not gotten his book yet, but I'm going to. Again, Carrie Newhoff, hope I'm saying that correctly. I'm probably not. Wrote a book, At Your Best. And it's kind of thematically says, stress less, accomplish more. At Your Best, you can order your copy today. So At Your Best, you can go online and find that. Go to Barnes & Noble, go to Amazon, wherever it might be you order books. Check that out. You can also email, and I pop that up on the screen. You can email me at osarector@gmail.com. You can email Corey at coreybowie@aol.com. We would love to hear your thoughts, questions, concerns, ways we can improve. We'd love to hear about how you think these podcasts are working. If you have a theme or an idea you'd like for us to do for a podcast, or a guest you would like us to invite into the show to be a part of it, we would love to do that. Corey, any last words as we...
Well, I this article a bit more and really try to think about the positive way we can keep moving forward here and in my own world too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I will do the same. And we look forward to continuing to be a community known as Old St. Andrews together, not only in person and online. We'd like to live into a both and instead of an either or. Friends, I hope that you've enjoyed our conversation today. Have a blessed rest of your week. And we look forward to seeing you in church, especially at our worships, Saturday at 5 p.m., Sunday morning at 8 a.m. or 10 a.m. You can do the 10 a.m. in person or online. God bless everyone. Take care.